article this morning. We just got
Oh,
Ishmael's article this morning. So Frodo's put that into the book. He's also done something interesting that I begged him to do, and that's put our names in the titles so people can find us easily because we don't have an index. So you can't easily get to article people directly. So he's doing that this time, which is helpful. And then I'm going to go through Ishmael's article by the method I was using, which is turning it into word checking it here, and then making changes in author. Then I'm going to put the whole thing through spell check one more time. And then finally, when this is ready as a PDF, I'll be running the PDF through the accessibility checker, which is now a federal mandate for academics. And anything that's not working, I'll fix as the best I can. But I did some things. I had to make some choices because people are from different countries. So anybody that has British type spelling stayed British type spelling. Anyone who's American and had both, I made American. So I did some consistency checking. All the hyphens and dashes are done the same way so that there's consistency across all the articles. What else did I do? Oh, I checked for run-ons and fragments, things like that. It's a grammar stuff. As you know, I taught grammar for like a billion years before I became here at WSU. So I did a lot of grammar checking and made consistent grammar choices. So non-restrictive clauses and stuff like that. Commas, which is my specialty, I made commas all consistent. So,
Oxford or no Oxford?
oh, I like the comma after the series
Okay.
for good reasons, as Twitter and Threads will show you in their memes.
so
And
just,
you're
no, sorry, go on.
no,
Yeah,
I was
what's
going to
best for
say
the
you read the
AI?
book Eat, Shoots, and Leaves, Deanie? Yeah, okay.
It's,
So,
it's interesting how important commas are with programming languages when you're doing lists and arrays of things. The trailing
Um,
comma in JavaScript and many
Peter,
languages.
teaching coding has helped me so much with students writing because if they leave out a comma, I'll say, uh-huh, and this works just like if you leave out a tag here. What happens when you leave your tag out here?
hmm.
The whole text goes to hell in a handbasket. Well, that's the same for this comma. Grammar is grammar, no matter what form you're using it in, right?
So just to underscore what Dini's saying, so this is an author, so it's the metadata. So for instance, we, as Dini just said, we manually added by Dave Millard. Because if you're in author, it'll automatically say anyway, but it's the export that matters. And we don't really have time for the programmers to change what's shown on the export. You see Ken here, Ismail, and so on, right? So it's really leading into the bigger issue, what we talk about. What data do you have for this stuff, right? And it's great if it's underlying data, but if it's not useful to the reader, there's no real point. But it further means that we can do things like endnotes, double click on them, and they appear. Of course, we can do that with citations, as you know. It also means I can skip ahead with keyboard shortcuts that no one will learn. I accept that. But so it goes by heading or. So that's one of the things we fixed, and now you can see it's broken. All the articles should start on the left-hand page. But for some reason, by doing a small little thing, it moved. So that's the whole rejigging for printing, and then after that, we will do the PDF for distribution. And after that, we will do individual PDFs for every single article. So
Which
that'll
means
be
everybody
easier.
has a DOI, an individual DOI.
Yeah. So hang on, where are you guys? Here you are. So that we have units of stuff. It's a shame Fabienne is not here because I have a French quote in the beginning of the book. Thought he would be amused.
One thing that I'm thinking about, because we have some money left over from the grant, a lot of more money than I expected because we moved the symposium to the US, from the US to England. There's a less travel money. So we saved a bunch of money. And so one of the things that Frodo and I are talking about for moving forward with the funds is putting the book in VR, which is what I've been wanting to do, and he's been wanting to do. But then that question arises, what should that really look like? It's one thing to have the book in an environment where you could like move the pages like a book. But that's not how how I imagine the space. I want it to be much more different. But then that means what is the knowledge object in that space? And that's a question we have not answered in the 2 years of our project. That's the one question we're left with, the big
But we've
one.
asked it in increasingly interesting ways.
Yes, we've done a lot of things, but we haven't answered that central question. And Brandel, you said something last week I thought was very interesting, and that was WebXR is not going to let us do the things we want to do. And you made it sound pretty final, which, in my head, as somebody who does digital preservation, is very concerned about not having open source technologies to do the things that I'm doing. So, that brings me back to, do I go to a Unity and Unreal or Godot to do the things?
What is it that we want to do that we will not be able to do in WebXR specifically?
Brandel?
WebXR, from a privacy and a consistency standpoint, reduces the idea of the markup in the browser to a generic runtime in a way that isn't reconcilable with the rest of the model of the web. So if you're talking about making the web a sort of a reference point for documents and information, then WebXR, especially in a longer term, is likely not going to be the best way to produce that in a sort of an open and discoverable way. You can't index WebXR pages because they're entirely being sort of generated and populated by JavaScript. So there's not a way that you could have a WebXR Wikipedia today based on that as a sort of a model. You need to have declarative information. That's one of the sort of success stories of the web, is the fact that it's made out of this information rather than these programs.
That's not a problem that is solved by going to a game engine.
No, I agree. So, Dini, on the point of going to Unity or Godot, I would prefer WebXR to those two. What I want to do and what I'm building personally, what I'm sort of staking my career on, is building a system whereby the web itself can be spatial, and the building blocks of having models and environments and being able to pull those into increasingly composable sort of mechanisms, and coming up with our best guess at the merging of privacy preservation and things like spatial gestures is the sort of the critical work of the next decade on the web and web standards.
Brandel, I would say, completely agreeing with you, nothing that I'm saying I think is going to contradict anything you're saying, that given the work that you're doing for the next 10 years and how important that is, and given the fact that this book, the content already exists and it wants to be published in 2026, having a system, as imperfect as it is, where the support code is JavaScript,
Absolutely,
is a path toward what you're doing.
yes,
Yeah.
I agree with that
And
entirely.
what we're trying to do in the lab, like, for example, we've got Richard Holton's Figursky at Finhorn on Acid, which I've shown twice now to the group. And we've got these 3D models of actual artifacts that are in that space, right? And now we're bringing in the book, the hypertext novel that we have marked up as HTML outside of StorySpace, which is that proprietary software that he originally used in 2001. So now we're bringing that into the space. We're going to read the text as you can work with these objects that are in the text, that are referred to in the text. What I'd love to do ultimately is have Richard Holton's body in that space talking to me as somebody that I interact with in the VR program I play in, Supernatural. So when I'm doing my Supernatural VR boxing or kickboxing, I'm actually interacting with a 3D model person that's my coach. I would love to have Holton and every artist that I'm putting into the museum physically in their space, talking to the visitor and saying, "This is my novel. This is how I did it." And I've got a video of him talking, but I want him live in that space. And I want every author that's in the museum and library in that space. And I can't do that with WebXR. I can do that with an engine, with a MetaHuman. model. So there's things that we can't do that I'm dying to do, that if I can't really do it in WebXR, I may have to shift and have, my thought is the museum will stay WebXR, but I'll have a version of the visualization space in the Apple Store for the Vision Pro specifically, because I don't think Quest is going to be our audience. That's done in Unity or Unreal Engine, probably Unity, because Unreal Engine doesn't play well with Apple.
Well, Peter has his
Eva.
hand up. Ivo, do you mind an intro in a minute? And after we're done with the section. Okay, cool.
Hi.
I'm virtually putting your hand up, and I'll put mine as well after you. Peter, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I have a real problem with systems that, in the name of protecting my privacy, shoot me in the foot and refuse to let me authorize them to share something with another system or another user that I want to actively share. They're handcuffing me, saying, I know better than you do what your value judgment should be on privacy, and therefore I am going to put you in a straitjacket for your own good because I know better. And I just despise systems that do that to me. Surely, if we have JavaScript running in these environments, it could find some way to talk to another server, make a call, send some data out so that we can jury rig some sort of a collaboration system.
Yeah, good point,
Okay.
Peter.
End rant.
And Rand. Okay, Ivo, please go ahead with your point and or introduction. Nice to see you.
I'll do both. Hi, pleasure to meet you. I am a 20-year producer, creator, technologist in this space. I am also VP of the XR Guild and am currently working on a large immersive social space that complements our library, which we've built over the last year. I'm also curating an art tour across the worlds tomorrow, which I believe we have about 34 participants. We cap those around 50 because of the constraints that you were just speaking about in terms of museums and institutions not necessarily being able to do what they want to do in WebXR. So I wanted to ask you, is it Dean? Am I pronouncing
Dean.
today?
Deanie.
Deanie, thank you. I wanted to ask you if you had looked at Play Canvas. This is something that we are considering as a workflow for use with Viveverse. We've built an XR Guild hall and library, and we plan to use that for our mixed reality events where we want to support larger groups of people being able to gather in the library and sort of, institutional use cases. And Play Canvas was recommended to us from Viveverse as the best capability set for the audio needs we have in terms of being able to support a beautiful space that's lightweight in WebXR, but that can also have lots of people speaking well together.
That sounds great. I don't know that at all, but I'll look at it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pleasure to meet you all.
great. It's made by Hi Evo. We've met in very early days of XR Guild. I sort of dropped off the meetings, but it's exciting to see that it's still going strong. Play Canvas is made by Snap, or was acquired by Snap, and they still sort of keep a line at distance. But it's an excellent sort of Unity-like. One of the points about WebXR is that there's not a significant distinction between the capabilities of something like WebXR and the capabilities of Unity beyond that people have not written that into an engine. Unity is an engine where WebXR is not. And so that's one of the challenges with it, is that the web kind of is an engine, whereas WebXR is just a way of stitching a couple of pictures to a couple of sensor streams. And that's one of the sort of foundational reasons for why spatial web will be better served by coming up with different metaphors.
We haven't, so thanks for that, both of you. We haven't had group events inside the space right now. The space is meant for a visitor to come in and interact with the objects themselves one-on-one as kind of a reading experience, singular reading experience or archival experience. But it doesn't mean I don't want to do events because I do a lot of exhibitions and a lot of what we call traversals. In fact, it's interesting, Frodo, I was talking to Bob Stein yesterday. So those of you who know Bob Stein, he was telling me that he had given his CDs of Voyager. So we have a bunch of my library, but then he gave some to Stanford. He's trying to get his hands on the ones from Stanford to do live traversals with us, which would be great. to get that on record, to have Bob Stein reading the works that he published and have that in the library. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things I think are important for future generations, right?
Yeah, that's a very good idea. Two things. I'm going to share screen briefly. One is on development in general. Here we are.
Yeah, I've added
Hang on.
things about.
Don't need my double voice. You can see it, right? So this was originally kind of a mistake because look at all these nodes. But the thing is, they actually render well. Each one of these characters is a full 3D object. Currently, they are dumb in the sense that there's nothing behind them in what you're seeing here, but it's still quite useful. And I can place, I remember certain clusters over there, clusters over here, because like in the real world, we organize by clustering, by grouping. So that was kind of fun. But what is new today and pertinent to our discussion is this. So make sure there's no sound. Sorry, this is why I was late. I was at the cafe getting extra caffeinated. So this is author in Vision. But Vision, with all due love and respect, Brandel, the native environment, and this is also to you, Dini, in terms of game engines and native, it's actually really limited on the Vision now. If you are in a shared space like this, we can now allow you to double tap and edit the node, but the node editing is stuck to the master document. You can't edit the node by itself, which is bizarre. And to make a new one, also, you cannot. So you can do these things, but we're finding it to be an incredibly restricted environment for all kinds of reasons. So other than doing an actual game engine rather than native Vision OS development, I don't see a lot of extra flexibility. I find that with the WebXR work we've done, we get a cleaner, more useful experience already. The second thing was the key thing that most of you know. The key thing for me when we're talking about data formats in the future and all of that, I'm not too worried personally about the specific environment. I'm much more worried about the specific data, which is why it's so important that any object, as Dini was saying earlier, a knowledge object, whatever we define it to be, can say what it is, and that we can save relationships. These are incredibly achievable things. It'll be a large part of the focus of the work next year. Over to you, Ken.
I just pointing out, I'm in a computer science department. We built a full game engine in WebXR, and it's a multiplayer mixed reality game engine. And my CS grad students do that. That's part of what we teach them in our VR class. So the fact that there may not be a commercial thing out there, but it's not something that can't be done by someone who has the knowledge of computer graphics, et cetera, et cetera. There's nothing inherent about it. It's just that hasn't maybe where the culture has gone, perhaps.
Yeah, and in fact,
sorry, Brandel, you take that.
Well, I would just violently agreeing. And also, for example, Web GPU has only really just come on the scene. And so basically all existing engines, as limited as they are, haven't even been built with Web GPU at the core. So being able to kind of restart with that. Web GPU is the successor to WebGL, which has the sort of the benefit of the being sort of a rebuild of some of the metaphors based on how much we do of each of the different kinds of tasks. In computer graphics, it bundles a lot of things that are repetitive and things like that. And by consequence, it's much faster and much faster at the kind of things people want to do today. And yeah, if somebody wants to take that work on, and to be clear, like WebXR is not going away, is a wonderful thing to be able to create experiences and games and things like that. What my objection to it is for it to do the work of the web, where the web is about the linkage and relation of documents and content. You can do that, but the sort of the central sort of benefit of the web is the sort of the composability and the reachability, people being able to kind of make sense of that data source and the content to do things like scraping and crawling and automation and things like that. WebXR renders those things incredibly challenging. And the fact that so much of the web, so much of WebGL is 3JS is providing something of a benefit in that regard. But that's indicative that we should construct different building blocks for the future that sort of maintain that level of abstraction for the privacy benefits as well as for the benefits of the indexability, accessibility, and things like that. Rhoda's back on camera.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, Safari, over to you. I was just wondering, Brandel, really briefly, is this analogous to how we had the mobile web for a while, which tried to solve that problem and did it horribly, or is it completely different?
The mobile web is just stopped. Oh, you mean WAP? Yes, yes. WAP as in not the song. Yes. It's a lot like that. But it's also like it the fact that before x86 there was no commonality to chipsets, so people would literally have to recompile programs for every single processor architecture, and so they would ship source code, and it was a terrifying thing. Anyway, yeah, Safari Monkey, please.
Yeah, I was just going to say regarding that, have we not seen with the evolution of the web that increasingly there has been a disconnect between how the elements were intended to be used and how they are actually used in modern sites? And so, like, it trying to build things back in sort of like 90s web terms doesn't really seem like it's effective. Like the sort of the presentation and the structure of the web seem to have largely become entirely separate in modern websites. Or
in terms of presentational separation, absolutely. I mean, but that's a success story of the web and its metaphors in terms of being able to use CSS for presentational aspects and HTML for the content and JavaScript for the functionality. To me, that means that we should do more of it, not less.
That's fair. I guess what I meant was that the HTML has become significantly more presentational, like where it's no. If you look at just the HTML of a page, it no longer tells you much about, like, it's very difficult to read, I guess is what I'm getting at.
That depends. I mean, if you look at any institutional organization, anything large that has, in the United States, Americans with Disability Act requirements for its accessibility, you remove the CSS, it's remarkably readable. So I can only speak for one company in Cupertino, but if you look at apple.com and you take the CSS out, it looks like a page from the 90s in terms of the way that the document is structured, the semantic relationship. And in fact, accessibility has strongly encouraged people who make use of it in that way to be able to do that. And so you may be surprised by how legible HTML is if you actually remove it or if you try to use the accessibility rotor. And that much of that success is derived from the semantic use of it. Certainly, it's not the only way to write. I enjoy
generally
being
agree with that.
Yeah.
I guess I was just wondering whether the fully fleshed version and the sort of the simplified version needed to have that same source, but that's that's I guess a separate conversation. But yeah.
Ken.
I just wanted to add that when I'm doing research on the web, I will build HTML elements generally in JavaScript, which I know isn't as transparent to someone looking at the page, because I want them to be dynamic and I want to keep changing them and modifying them and adding things based on what people do. And JavaScript is a programming language. So it's just a practical consideration that I cannot have the dynamic functionality I want within the HTML, which was meant to actually be much more statically declarative. So that's just a reality of programming language versus something that is meant to declare a relatively static structure.
Mm-hmm.
This is such a beautiful discussion, and I'm so glad we went into this territory because Safari, I feel similar towards going into XR or whatever we're going to call it because I keep fighting in the good academic sense for the simplest possible spatial layouts, which is akin to HTML. I really think we should be able to have a list of X, Y, Z, and here's an ID that somewhere else can refer to what the heck this thing is. And if you want somewhere else to have the font, fine, but it's plain text for space, right? So I think that's really, really important to be able to store and share because, my laptop here, Brandel, I'm using obviously a Mac and it's 8 terabyte storage in a laptop, 128 gigs of RAM. It's absolutely crazy. It's wonderful. It's exciting. But in 10 years, it'll be nothing. And despite the fact that we have this, Brandel has made the point so many times, so beautifully, we should not be afraid of wasting pixels, right? We should not be afraid of wasting space. But when it comes to long-term storage, it's the opposite. We should not be afraid to really try to focus on the key stuff and then decide on what else is not key stuff. And I see Dini shaking your head, and I'm happy to hand over to you for this. But
Well, just what key stuff are you referring to keep and throw away?
That's exactly the important discussion. I would start a discussion on that of saying for spatiality, what is where? That should be number one. And it's not a black and white thing. What is where? You have a thing here, thing there. For a lot of the really important work that you are dealing with, that's not enough. The key stuff is texture, spacing, relationships, colors, all kinds of other stuff, which then also needs to be done. But for a lot of cases, like for instance, our very own book,
12 o'clock.
We don't need to have the font Times New Roman italic, point when we show Ken's name in space, for instance. That can be like plain text that's represented at the point of rendering. So it really depends on the case. Anyway, I'm so excited by this, and thank you for letting me make my coffee. I can be alert now, and over to you, Tom.
Well, I wanted to riff off of the document you shared yesterday a little bit as well, because I think it relates to this conversation. One of the things I have always had a problem with, just like Ted Nelson has with the web, is the jump link. And I think one of the concerns I have is that we're replicating that. Citations are jump links, if you think about it. Even in a book citation, it's taking you to another piece of information somewhere else, but it's transporting you out of the space you're in right at that point, assuming you go right there or something like that, right? But that's essentially what the role of a citation is to find your way back to the original. But again, I understand why the web is limited in that way. I understand why Tim Berners-Lee did what he did, but given the technology available, given a lot of other factors, but as a result, it's just propagated into, again, huge stacks of paper. And I wonder, I'm going to pose this as a question, in an XR environment, does that open up a greater possibility for Ted Nelson's transclusionary connections? And how would that look, technically speaking? Because instead of having a two-dimensional space, essentially, which is what the web is, effectively, is a two-dimensional stacks of two-dimensional spaces. Instead of having a two-dimensional space, you have a three-dimensional space, and that changes how you can display information. And that maybe we do need to make that jump because, as I've described before in my talk as well as the symposium, is that it's not one point to one point; it's a web of information that supports anything. And I think citations do that an injustice because you don't see all of the richness of the connections involved. You don't see the connections to the connections to the connections and so on and so forth. So I'm just throwing that out there. I know that's going to drive some people crazy, but that's I think that's something we could bring up in this conversation as well. So how do we do that?
That's such an important thing. And Brandel, please.
I'm raising the chat. Would it help, do you think, Tom, if open in new window becomes the default? Because one of the challenges that we have right now is the real estate. Laptops were hard enough, but phones are excruciatingly limited in terms of the scope of what information they have the ability to kind of reflect the existence of. We are so limited in terms of the angular view, the amount that we can kind of indicate that things are there. And so, if you imagine a world where, if you pick up a new piece of paper, that doesn't mean that the old one went away. And so if you have a default system, even if it's not the system default, but a default for a certain modality where everything is actually in a new window, what it means is that a citation as it exists actually has the ability to conjure the new piece as an independent artifact such that you know exactly where the old one is. In theory, the back button is that, you know that it's a stack of paper and the thing is underneath it. But if you had a more tangible reference, does that do some of that job? Or what are the things that you
Yeah.
feel like fall flat?
So, I mean, I would say that one other aspect which I was thinking about on my walk this morning is that, to what extent are we having a conversation when we're pulling two pieces of paper together? When you do citations, you're listening theoretically or metaphorically to the source that you get your information from, but you have no way of feeding back to that source and asking it questions and saying, did you really mean this? Did you, and that sort of thing. And so, having a much more dynamic view of links. Now, if that room is its own universe of information, in other words, you see all of the connections within the work that you've gone to, and then so on and so forth, but you always have a pathway back or something like that. That opens up some interesting possibilities. But again, I'm just trying to challenge people to think a little bit in terms of, first of all, the idea of having a different kind of link than what we usually have on the web. And secondly, this idea of a two-way communication amongst scholars, amongst writers, amongst thinkers who are trying to create this stuff, and where can we open the doors to that? I have a button from the '90s from when I the deep dark past when I actually worked for Apple. It says at Apple we open doors, not windows. And so, but I think that still holds, and I think that's actually a really good quote for today. So anyway, thanks.
But, Tom, I just have to say, my computer had a virus the other day, but it's my fault. I left too many windows open. Please go ahead. I couldn't help it.
Tom, just to respond to you, what was interesting about academics was that when you had a publication and you did a citation, you were having a conversation. And the idea was that someone would read that person that you cited, or those people you cited would read your article and respond to that. So you had this ongoing conversation and debate in the field till you come to a point where everybody can maybe agree on a point, right? That was the classic way academics was supposed to work.
But it's
right?
inefficient because you have to read and go back and forth and republish and all this stuff. It could take years.
It became inefficient for us, but it wasn't originally. I mean, in the days before email and the web, right? It was the only way besides conferences. The other thing we used to do is go to conferences and have real meaningful debates where people would actually argue in a constructive way over points. We don't
or the
do that
Society of
anymore.
Letters from the
you go to a
17th
conference
century.
now and you give your paper and people clap very politely.
Yeah.
And they're thinking in their brains, that's the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. It wouldn't friggin' work if I try, that's dumb. I've never, and you walk away saying that because in the real world today, you would never, ever take on anything anybody said in public. It's impolite. That's not what academics was supposed to be. It was supposed to be grisly and visceral, right? And I don't know when that stopped. I really don't, because it was still pretty gritty when I walked into the field, right? So it just kind of
I mean,
happened.
how do we create a more efficient and a safe space for those kind of conversations to happen?
Not even say, I don't want a safe space. I don't.
I understand. Yeah.
I want a space where, I mean, if you don't agree with me, like in this group, we have a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
There's not any shame in us taking on each other. And that's good. That is the most healthy thing we can do for each other, right? That is a gift. But that's not how we're training graduate students today. We don't want them to feel feel nervous about saying what they think. We want them to feel
And
comfortable.
what about
So I don't want
undergraduates?
my
That's even
students-
worse.
Oh yeah, and I'm a liberal, and I don't want safe
Yeah.
spaces. I want people to be able to feel comfortable speaking from a point of knowledge, where they say, "Well,
Right.
that's an interesting point you just made, but here is this person's perspective, and how do you put that into your argument? How do you reconcile these 2 points?" That to me is productive.
Hmm.
But I'm very old school. And I fully admit that. And so how do we, all of us, and then Ken, you're teaching right now, and so are you, Tom. And maybe Rob, you're doing some teaching as well now. The bottom line is, how do we continue with that kind of infrastructure? Because that is what models what happens on the web. Because what happens on the ground permeates everywhere else.
Right. And so how do we create a space where that actually happens and we can make that happen dynamically? Because that's really where ideas grow, is in the exchange of ideas and in the challenging and the debate over ideas. How can we make that more efficient? How do we grease the skids for those kind of conversations? And I think that's where the technology can really help us, but only if we make it fluid enough for people to maneuver in like that.
Well, it's our
So-
brains.
Make it
It's also
liquid
our
enough.
attitude. It's our attitude.
Oh,
If
yeah,
I say
sure.
something
I mean-
and you don't agree with me, Tom, if
Yeah.
you don't agree with me and you push back on me, then I get my feelings hurt. It's like, Tom doesn't like me. That's ridiculous.
But
That's
but we got to make it a much richer. I mean, this is the problem with social media, is that you
Right.
don't have that richer context. You don't have that deeper thing. When I was constantly communicating with people via text and chat streams during COVID, I got into fights with people I've been friends with forever over the silliest things because there was something missing in the conversation, right? And so how do we get that conversation to work better and share that, scholarly thing? We can't just replicate social media. That's a good way to fight people, get people fighting.
Let me mention this. I was watching Saturday Night Live, the film, which got bad reviews, but I'm a big Saturday Night Live fan.
I thought it was
right?
okay. I watched it.
I thought it was okay, but the
Yeah.
thing that I remembered as I was watching it was Dan Aykroyd turning to Jane Curtin and going, "Jane, you ignorant slut." So he would
Yeah.
say something, instead of him grappling with what she was saying or push back kindly, he would just attack her. And that to me was exactly what's happened in social media. That is exactly what social media
But
is
that was
about.
funny then, because it wouldn't have happened in the 70s in the same way, but now
But
it's
now it's
commonplace.
normal. Now it's normalized. And so instead of saying,
Yeah.
Deanie, that's wrong because Thomas Kuhn actually said this on this page, how do
Mhm.
where are you getting your information? Then I'd go, well, let me think. Oh, maybe I got it from somewhere else. That's a different conversation than Deanie, you're an ignorant slut, which is what people got used to hearing,
So 2 things on this. One, for the human side of the dialogue, of course, that is what we're trying to do in this very community. And that kind of bad language can be fine. It really depends on context. Here in Britain, we have something we call banter, right? Of course, we have it around the world, but that's what we call it here. And it is mostly men, when they talk to each other, it's like, how are you doing, you idiot? Did you have a bad Christmas because you're so stupid? Obviously more colorful than that, right? And we're actually going through the process of teaching our 8-year-old son, Edgar, what it means. Because no, you shouldn't use bad language, but sometimes with friends, if you're really careful about the context, it's okay to allow for a space where you can have some sarcasm, where you can have different ways of expressing, but it's still in a safe environment is really, really important, and it's far away from trivial. On the other side of this, Tom, specifically to what you're talking about, for me, what I've been working on since I got my PhD, which most of you know is very recent, started 2016, is all about making citations have more stuff in them and to make that robust. I really think that will allow, it won't itself, but it will allow us to really address some of the things you're talking about. By the way, citations, I don't just mean what someone else has published. It can be citations to your own stuff too, right? Because, I play Battlefield 6. It's so amazing, the game, in terms of the mechanics. I'm not saying it's an inventive game. It's the same formula. It's been forever. But, A bullet knows its weight, it knows its velocity, the thing it hits knows whether it can be penetrated or not, etc. And citations today is a few lines of plain text at the end of a document. To me, it is the biggest obstacle in building an academic global brain. Through whatever means, whether it's JSON or BibTeX or whatever, to have citations that also include what they reference, just one step. To have the one thing Dini has been really impressing on me this year is different kinds of annotations. So if the author of the paper annotates this citation is included because I kind of have to, or this one I disagree with, link types, stuff we've talked about forever. If we allow that in our documents on the web or outside the web, I think the visualizations and interactions can be so much richer. Like what I showed you here in space, these were all dumb objects. But I mean, imagine if I could take one of Dini's papers, pull out something she said, and have that kind of argument that Dini just talked about, based on her citations, going back to the source, all of that stuff. The only reason this doesn't happen, I believe, and this is my final point, the people who are doing well in academia didn't need it to get where they are. So why in the world should it make it easier for those coming behind, right? It's a power thing, a natural power thing, and I'm not angry at those people. But like ACM, the Digital Library Board, I met with them. They don't want to improve any of this stuff because they want a better file format. When I ask them, what is that? They say, I have no idea. So they really are making perfect the enemy of the good. I think we can go a long way by just giving more stuff.
ACM can't, I'm going to say this, not to defend ACM, but ACM has been around a very long time. And to make a change in the system that they're using, I mean, I'm watching my university system change from Drupal to WordPress right now. And the pain, the misery, the problems, the challenges are immense. And I just imagine, and that's just changing from one system to another. That's not even changing the way they're doing anything.
Yeah,
What you're suggesting for ACM is changing everything.
It's
And
actually,
they just don't think that way. I mean, they're computer scientists, and it's just good enough, right? It's good enough.
it's actually not 100% like that because first of all, they've just started introducing cover pages. So when you download a PDF now, it has some metadata as a cover page on the article you wanted, which will ruin pagination, which has absolutely no useful information, but they decided to put it there. And in their databases, all of this stuff is there.
They're doing that for interlibrary loan. It's
Yeah.
it's something that interlibrary loan requires. So when I get order an article and it comes to me, they all come with the cover page. ACM never had that. So
Right.
they're now doing what everybody's been doing for 20,000 years, but it's not effective today like it was
No,
20 years ago.
it's not effective. When it comes to, they have the information, I've seen their databases, they have all this stuff. But for what you're saying, I completely agree, cultural reasons and kind of technical reasons, it's not happening. But that's just one example. Anyway, Ken, solve all the problems, please.
No, unfortunately, I'm going to speak to something that was being discussed when I raised my hand. So we're in a very different place now. But so if you guys can remember back that far. Again, I work in a computer science department, and I learned very early in my career when I was probably about 20 when I was working in industry that I rarely probably means never, changed anyone's mind by anything I ever said. So I learned very quickly to shut up and make a demo. And as soon as they saw it, yeah, that's what I was talking about. They even believed it was their idea. You know, it was really fast. And then suddenly it's like, oh, change the conversation. And I teach my students to make stuff. And I feel as though a conversation in which I make an artifact that says, hey, look, this, and then someone makes a working artifact that you can interact with that says, no, but also that, is a very productive form of conversation of the sort that has been discussed earlier. And I'm sorry that more people are not educated properly to make things, because I think it would short circuit a lot of needless circular arguments.
You know what? From my perspective, I agree, but it's not just making a demo, it's also getting it seen in the right audience. Like, talk about citation. So, because of Mark Anderson pestering me, like, obviously in a very good way, if you have Reader installed on your Mac, you double click on a citation, you get all the information there. Right? If you have the document, which I don't have for this one, I click on it, it'll open the very PDF instantly to the right page. Right? This one will now, unfortunately, just go to the web and all kinds of nonsense. So I agree with you. I mean, I am obviously very much a follower of Doug Engelbart, and he only ever made progress with demos. So of course, I agree with you, Ken. But it's also a question of getting it to scale, getting the right dialogue, getting the right people, and so on. That was a bit of a frustration there. Astral Druid, please come with positive stuff.
Yeah. So actually, I really like that framing that Ken just set up here. The discussion on learning through experience is so crucial. So I talk about game design and just dialectics of play often, and when we play games, they have a funny way of playing us back too. Also, when we build technology, we tend to build it for the purposes of ourselves first. And so we've kind of locked ourselves in a zero-sum game paradigm ever since technologists first created locks back in the day. Humanity used to live within the commons. And so when we talk about libraries, we talk about common systems, and these are systems of abundance, a positive sum game. And I hear a lot of clever thought these days because we do live in a zero-sum paradigm enforced by market systems. And so when we talk about clever solutions to protect privacy in one state, but we are kind of at a very critical inflection point. Humanity is able to, I think, humanity, like broadly speaking, has like a concept of like the power of play, in play in games, and also like the conversation has now shifted due to the course of like AI, like. Our mission now should be to prepare and organize for current and future systems of abundance. And I would like to challenge, and I believe that like we need to create an environment so that we can learn and teach best practices and implementation and to share it with others. So like citations is also going to be very crucial for there too. And I do believe that our libraries are going to be much more crucial as we go forward in sharing this information. We may need to build an entirely new network from our libraries to do this. And it is a lot easier to do it these days than it was 15 years ago, or 20 years ago, or 50 years ago.
Hard to argue with that.
I would say, Astro, what I see in the future is being able to link our personal libraries to one another, to share our personal libraries, to build what we have that we think is important, and then overlay that with why these are in our library and how they function in our work, and then sharing that corpus with other people, and then having these kind of modular library experiences for people.
Yeah, I think I just for the new year, I'd like to challenge people to think about how to build within positive sum systems in higher trust environments. The political calculus does change in a non-zero sum game. The winning move isn't to take as much as you can, but only what you need to carry.
Brandel.
We should do archival work.
I wanted to talk about the challenges of building something new, or especially sort of a green field. John Boyce, who's a really wonderful YouTuber, does these really great sort of three-dimensional YouTube videos of spaces that are sort of explanatory of things like the names of people called professional sports people called Bob, or the build out of the global communications network. And his most recent one is about that. And he sort of says that the birth of the internet starts in 1851, because there has been an unbroken line from that first undersea cable between, I guess, Newfoundland and mainland Canada. Yeah, like it's obviously a ship of Theseus. That one is not still running, but from there to the undersea Atlantic cable and all of the other sort of things that built from it, um, the infrastructure has had this continuity where we don't have to be burdened by absolutely everything from the initial sort of conditions of that one under channel cable. But the reality of most of our technical systems is that we still use QWERTY, even though Dvorak is better. We still have a number of these kinds of requirements, and so um, we we don't have to be beholden to them forever, but we do need to be aware of what they are and what they do, and understand that things are going to be easier if they are sort of constructed with the past in mind, and understand that the future is going to be accretive. It's going to be built on layers of the past. There's a really great talk by Nick Foster. I think it's called "Good Design is," but maybe the future is messy. I can't remember. But one of the things he says in that is that if you imagine the year 2100 and what, for example, the United States is going to be like, one of the things you don't realize is that over two-thirds of the housing stock that's going to be in use in 2100 is already built. Like the buildings and the places people are going to live, at least in the United States, is where we're living right now. And as a homeowner of a place from 1956, that terrifies me because it's already, in something of a state itself. So I agree that we should come up with new things. I agree that we should expect to be able to expand and extend things. But I also think that it's essential to be aware of, simply to the point between Frode and Dini, is that, like, on the one hand, it seems like ACM's done the right thing by not having a cover page, but then realizing that there's this pedigree of standards and systems where actually it would have been better for it to have had the cover page all along for Interlibrary Loan, is just emblematic of the fact that there are these sort of infrastructural kind of requirements. XKCD has a comic about the spacebar heater that is an excellent sort of accentuation of the point. And yeah, when we build the future, we need to work on how it bolts onto as much of the past as possible, frankly.
Yes, and AI. I think this is an aspect where AI becomes really, really useful, because it used to be commas in programming mattered, and of course they do in real programming. But when it comes to some metadata now, for instance, my approach to metadata, and just for the newbies here, the approach to metadata that was my PhD was basically an appendix. That is, whatever format the document was, PDF, Word, whatever, would use the BibTeX, academic standard BibTeX formatting of author equals name inside curly brackets, comma, title equals all of that stuff. When I give that to any LLM now, and I say, can you give me all the metadata that's here? It does. If I say, can I have it in JSON? It'll give it to me in JSON. The reason for this is when this was quote unquote done, invented, whatever, I expected that maybe in 100 years, some smart system would be able to read it. So the reference page itself has, in plain English, the following is information about the document. It's metadata. It's not part of the document. It explains it like talking to a person on the other side of the world who I've never met. Already today, it's flawless with all the AI. So as long as we have some way of putting data in normal documents, it can be extracted by all kinds of systems. And that's not like the kind of AI that writes you a novel or whatever. It's just a smarty pants format moving system. Tom.
Yeah, I mean, with in all of these conversations, one thing I think that I'd like to encourage us to get away from, though, is that once you write something down in a book or whatever, it's effectively dead. I mean, you can write revisions and things like that, but you've frozen it in time. And one of the things that I find really, the way I'm using books a lot these days is, and I still read books, don't get me wrong. I sit down and read things cover to cover because I enjoy reading. But when I'm trying to get stuff done, is to be able to have a conversation with the work in a way through using the AI. I load things up in a Notebook LM and I have, back and forth conversations. And the ability to do this at a high rate of speed and dynamically is really useful. Like the Substack I just shared is a great piece on the skills of the future that, AI is going to demand of us. And it's a very thoughtful piece about how, thinking needs to change about what we need to be able to do, et cetera, going forward. This guy writes some really great stuff. He makes me feel bad because I feel like my stuff is so pale compared to his. But the fact that I'm able to take that document and, as part of my course redesign for the spring, say, look, I want to make sure that the goals of the course align with the ideas that this guy has. And I can do that dynamically. It took me a few minutes to, rejigger the course. It's going to take me much longer to put it into Canvas than it will be for that kind of thing. But the fact is, I'm having many more conversations with texts, and it's in the sense of, what do these two pieces have to do with each other? What's the real point here? And then I can go back and dig in and so on and so forth. But I can do that so much more dynamically with AI systems than I could if I were just sort of reading them and writing in the margins, like Dina was talking about. Or I have so many books. I never wrote in the margins. I always use the little 1-inch Post-it notes because I didn't. The idea of writing in a holy book was always kind of repugnant to me. So I use the little Post-it notes that I write on those, and I can also find things quicker. It's like a little bookmark. But that's a different kind of relationship with books than you can have with an AI. And so, again, how can we get into a more dynamic conversation with our ideas or with other people's ideas using XR, using AI? How do we, I think that's the real challenge.
I think that's the real opportunity. So I know you agree with me on that, Tom. I'm just having fun with the phrasing. I've been using AI a lot recently for music, as some of you unfortunately have been informed of several times. And when doing poetry with ChatGPT, so I've written this stuff, turn it into poetry for a spoken jazz thing. Every once in a while, like I posted here in the chat, it comes up with a sentence that I won't necessarily use, but it helps me think a bit differently. So there are many ways of what you're talking about, Tom, that I strongly agree with. But, first of all, one of the things it wrote about all the stuff I've written to you guys recently about citations, it talked about how citations is what keeps it warm, is what keeps it honest. I thought that was really quite beautiful in how it's communicated. But I would also like to maybe consider, Tom, combining these discussions, because we are primarily in this group, not always, but primarily talking about how the hell can text be useful in XR, right? And Dini throws a book across the room. Yeah, you can do that in XR as well, and then have it boomerang back if you want, right? This is really, really important. So try to combine the dynamics of LLMs and stuff where appropriate to help us think and learn with the spatiality is absolutely amazing.
One thing we haven't brought up is the idea of reviewing, right? Because I'm the editor of the Leonardo reviews for the Leonardo Journal. And every month I get like 5 or 10 or 15 reviews of books and articles and exhibitions and things like that. And I have to go through and make sure that they fit into Leonardo and do all the copy editing, all that stuff. And so it's interesting to get someone like Jan Battens, who's one of my favorite reviewers. He's dead honest. And if he doesn't like anything because it's missing something, like the man is so well read, he can point to something and say, this point is interesting. However, they neglected to do this, and this, reflect this, and this. That kind of review work is rare anymore because people aren't reading deeply enough to have that kind of wide and deep knowledge of something. The T knowledge, like knowing tech wide enough to be able to say something about the art and the technology. And he's just brilliant, right? So anytime I get something from Jan, I know I'm going to either want to buy that book, go to that exhibition. But then there's a lot of reviewers that say, oh, this book is really interesting. And the word interesting just makes me nuts. It's not interesting. As soon as you use that word, it's not interesting. Now, why is it? What is it that works? It's not, is it good or bad? What makes it function well? What makes it work for the field? for me as a reader, for me as somebody that subscribes to Leonardo. And that is sorely missing because we're so afraid of hurting people's feelings, right? And getting and part of that, just to finish that thought, is that so many people's reputations are built on those things. So if I put together an exhibition in Toronto like this summer, put a lot of energy and time and money into it, I want people to walk away thinking it's a good exhibition. Right. And people don't want to hurt my feelings. Aditi put so much work in this. I don't want to see anything negative about it. But I would want to know, what was I missing in this exhibition? What would have made this stronger? If I do this, if I get invited to remount this exhibition, what would I do differently? Right. Those are helpful things, but it means checking your ego. And it's hard for us to do that anymore. Now, especially if you're going to get tenure and you have a bad review on your book, and that book is going to get your tenure. And that's what's caused all this trouble, personally, in my personal opinion. Ken, sorry, hand up.
I don't think I was next, was I? I think someone was before me.
I can't see everybody's hands above them on that first realm. So Brandel, you next? Okay, Brandel, okay. I'm sorry, I can't see it on my computer anymore.
I think they're in order. So the first row, by definition, is that
Okay.
that. So when at least on my computer, they automatically reorder when people's hands are up. I wanted to say just about the sort of the point about AIs and LLMs and things like that. I actually use and have used my notes document in much the same way that many people seem to be using a ChatGPT session today for the last probably nearly 20 years, where I used to talk a lot to the person sitting next to me at work, wherever that work was. And once I worked with a guy who was sick of it and said, why don't you just write in a document? And I've done that. And almost all of the sort of the benefits that a lot of people seem to get from ChatGPT, I get just by talking to myself and being able to kind of respond to myself by verbalizing in that way. So I think there are a lot of things that people get sort of out of ChatGPT that are just associated with shifting the sort of the center of their praxis into something that can be kind of lifted by literacy and legibility and things like that. I'm also concerned that a lot of times people conflate sort of the idea of an intelligent agent with what it is specifically that LLM does. Like when we had Paul Smart here talking about what he was going to do with an LLM, what he was talking about was a thought experiment of a theoretically competent agent rather than what an LLM is. And I think that that's a valid thing to do, but to call it an LLM rather than a competent artificial intelligence agent is a disservice, frankly, to what it means we would need to do in order to achieve that. So just on those things, I think that it is worth, to Dini's point, rather than being satisfied with what is interesting, to be dissatisfied with what is AI, what do we mean by it, and what are the things that we can be confident about, what are the things that we're doing, and what do we believe that we're getting out of it. Because, as was evidenced also by Sam Altman's Sexy Fireman post with the wrong days on the calendar recently, a lot of the time these things have pass a superficial muster, but the further you look into them, the poorer they are in terms of being able to do the job that a person actually being tasked with the same thing would likely do. So yeah, I think those are important things to do, to be attentive to, and to the point of things like safety, like the power relations that underpin a lot of the things that we're talking about here are sort of, it's not that they're orthogonal, but simply making things easier when the challenges come from the fact that there are these inequalities and power relations that mean that people are scared or that their life is more tenuous as a consequence of things. Making more stuff, making things easier doesn't necessarily help that. And so, one of the things that I've learned from industry is that you can't solve social problems with technical solutions. And so when sort of literally 5 technical directors have tried to come into the marketing and communications department and be like, we should use a content management system, and they blow $10 million on the budget, and then they leave in ignominy 5 years later. That is because they're not truly addressing the actual social relations issue of what is causing them to be incapable of converting to a template system, which is something that fundamentally the creatives hate because they believe that it debases their work and undermines the level of autonomy that they have within it. But anyway, so the things I would say are there are lots of social things going on. That means that those critiques aren't irrelevant, but you need to be aware of the social aspect of it, and that when we talk about AI, it's worth our while to disentangle the pieces that we're sort of discussing. And yeah.
Absolutely, Brandl. I'm so glad I'm next. One of the cute things that came out of AI having gone through what I wrote was the future of text is not written, it is arranged. I thought that was a useful thought side of it. And I absolutely do not in any way endorse AI writing, because writing is supposed to primarily be for people to read, although of course it'll be read by AI as well. I find that quite disrespectful. But at the same time, I find AI summaries to superficially help you decide where to go to be useful. So I completely agree with the importance of looking at different aspects and not just generalizing. And then you talked about talking to your colleague. I'm very much like that. And thankfully, I have a gym trainer. She's currently in Bali. Emily and I had a session with her this morning. She knows absolutely everything about my work, except nothing goes in because she doesn't care. And that's a loving and respectful thing. I don't know her stuff either, but I get to speak it, right? And she has a little bit of feedback. We're quite good friends, so it's kind of funny. But then you get a chance with a group of you guys to speak out. And when you speak to someone who knows what you're talking about, it's a different echo. It's not a plain echo, right? Which I think is really amazing. And that brings me to my final point. That is what Dean is talking about is so important about how we review and edit and comment on work. Our books, The Future of Text, they are essentially written symposia, right? Dini has gone through and really cleaned up a lot of what she calls light editing. I call it a huge amount of work, but there you go. She's really done that. But one thing we don't want to do for this series of book is exclude what goes in. You know, we've decided for the future it's going to be no more than 2 articles because it can be too much. Peter, you did many and they were great, but it helped the discussion. But at the same time, Dini and I have certain, as editors, we have certain perspectives and understanding. But unless something is actually truly SHIT, we don't know. We don't feel we can judge it. It's for the future to judge. So that's why we're calling the books a written symposium. It's not an academic tome. So therefore, it becomes very, very different how we choose to evaluate the work. What's that?
The next step after. The next step would have been I clean everything up, get everything kind of done, but with comments all the way through saying, Peter, you said this here. Did you mean this over here? Tom, your page number is actually 259. Will you check? I would have done that all the way through for every article. Heavy copy editing, and I did not do that. So, and then once that's done, it goes to the publisher, and the publisher then accepts it and sends it out for review, and somebody else then does that for them, getting everything into the publisher's, proper formatting and getting it double checked, peer reviewed, double checked, and then it would go into press. So there's a whole spectrum that we haven't done and we're not doing. So just saying.
Yeah, very different kinds of publications. And Ken?
I just want to start by saying I am very happy and relieved that there is no chatbot that's as intelligent as Brandl. So that's a good thing. But one thing I wanted to say, which refers back to earlier in the conversation, in praise of books, is that there are a lot of forces in society. I don't even need to get specific, that are very eager to change and erase history. And a beautiful thing about books is that you cannot change them. What somebody was able to say in 1982, they can't come back later and change all the books to pretend that what they learned in 1987, they actually said in 1982. And I think this is a really good thing. Books cannot be used to alter history. And that is one of the primary things that makes them very valuable on our bookshelves.
Yeah, and Ken, just to say that's true, but we also update information. We learn something new. So,
Sure, but we have
but you refer back to that book. You
we
say
have provenance.
yeah,
We
have
say we
provenance.
updated this, and we have a record that the thing in 82 was changed in 87, and it's really important not to blur that. I agree with
right.
you, but it's important not to blur the distinction.
That's right.
And that is the whole key for what we're talking about here. I'm so glad you said that, because as Tom says, you should have a dialogue with the work, and that can be done on paper, it can be done with AI in different means, but you got to have a solid thing to have a dialogue with. Right? One thing I cannot stand about Google Docs is that it's essentially a long time scroll. Right? You can kind of go back, but a lot of government agencies use the darn thing. You know, they don't have at the end of the day, this is what the state was of this thing. So Ken, it is so important. Separate the interaction environment from the information storage. It has to be separate. It can't be all codified that changes. And yes, thank you guys. And someone else, I'm sure, has something to say on this.
Not everybody can use Google Docs, Froda, in the States, in the United States here. It's not considered okay in many agencies. And universities are moving away from them too,
Good.
because they're not accessibility checkable.
Oh, very good. Because here,
It's really weird. I'm going to say this about the accessibility checker in PDF. Every PDF I'm checking says check the contrast. And I'm going to be honest with you, black on white or black on off-white is the best contrast, or kind of black and kind of white. So the fact that I'm having to manually go through and say, this works, rather than check every hex number into Cooler and Adobe Cooler, I mean, that's just ridiculous. Of course, it's contrast.
yes, but there's a huge but, and I wish Mark was here, but he's on holiday. Mark, when he helped me with the paper a long time ago, he said that it helped him a lot to proofread my stuff by making not a nice warm background, making it black and white, much longer line spacing, blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
Partly for readability, and like manuscripts usually are double spaced, right? But also just change. He was used to reading it in one form, to read it in a different form. So this nonsense about accessibility, there are some people who require high contrast, other people it's an eye strain, right? We as a community really need to work to make sure that the task and the person gets what's best for their eyes. I mean, the amount of changes are made in Author for color combinations is something I'd rather not talk about. Astral, please.
So just to go back to the comment on freezing knowledge, I think about how when words are spoken in the present, I think that they're related to like the speaker and to the environment, and they kind of change, even though they might be the same words spoken in the past. A danger that we have through like AI models is that they could be speaking from the past, using those past words artificially, kind of without context for what it was actually speaking from. And that would be very confusing to people. I think there's something to be said in like ontology here. Just a thought that came to mind.
I think that was the original criticism of writing in Phaedra. But it's still not wrong.
No, absolutely. And that's really, really important. But at least something was said at that point. And my kind of current realization of LLM work is with the ChatGPT voice, because the voice is amazing. We did a test a few weeks ago. It told us something about TV shows that was wrong. Fine, that happens. But when we then updated it, it was so blasé about it. I mean, obviously it doesn't have emotions, but it's like, oh yeah, no, I was wrong. It's like, what if this was important information, right? But having something there, and if you have, just to really reiterate on the citations, if citations have rich information about them, systems should be able to go out and check if things have been retracted and other things like that. It just because it's solid as an object doesn't mean it should be solid in an environment. Astral, back to you.
Sorry, I'm going to take my hand down.
I'm leaving everybody and going to my lab's meeting. So Froda, send me the author version.
I finally did.
When you
It's in Slack.
Okay.
Yeah, took a while.
It's in Slack. Okay, all right. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Have a happy New Year, Dini. I think we're
Yeah,
Bye-bye,
thanks for
Dini.
getting that all around.
See
Bye.
you
Happy
all
New
next week. Yeah, happy New Year. Oh, yeah. Right. Tom.
Yeah, and I just want to reinforce the point, though, that we have all of these different instruments now with which to manipulate and understand text. And we need to figure out ways that anybody can grab any particular instrument that they need at that particular moment. Because, again, some books I have to read, some books I have to sit down and really chew on and think about, and so on and so forth. But there are a lot of books where I'm just looking for that one idea that I saw in there 10 years ago or something like that. Or I see something new and I want to fold it into existing work very quickly. And for that, again, AI is really handy at doing that and helping me do that. Obviously, it's not, when I'm doing low level work, especially like class instructional design, where it's not like Shakespeare. Then yeah, I'm gonna let the AI write that for me. And if I can get rid of that kind of writing, I can focus on the writing that matters too. So that's the other thing. So anyway.
Yes. And Safari.
I'd just like to remind people that in the same way as when you have a sort of an AI generated image, a lot of the time, like the very first glance, it looks good. And it looks good because it was trained with a bunch of, an army of people rating outputs and saying, does this look good? Does this not? In the same way, the text LLMs are the same. And so, I'm always very skeptical of our ability to judge them objectively because they are designed specifically and trained specifically to pass human judgment effectively. And so the very tool that you're using to measure them is the tool that is the tool that they are trained to exploit.
Yeah. I just add one of the funny things about lossy compression is that people go like, oh, there's no data lost, but by definition there is. It's just by definition like the stuff that matters least to us, and so we don't notice how much is gone. So JPEGs are the same, even though they're still sort of real.
I was thinking about modern video codecs in the same thought, so absolutely.
So we're getting close to the end of the day, the end of the year. And I think that one thing that's been very clear in the conversation today is that storage is very different from interaction. Storage should be very, very robust, very, very open, very, very accessible. Interaction should be the opposite. You should be able to change our view, change your mind, change your perspective, change our dialogue instantly. And no, I don't think that information presentation is what the world needs only. I mean, there are a lot of issues in the world. I know we all agree, even though we may not agree on exactly which ones are important. But I do believe very, very strongly that in order to help get things sorted, we have to help people do two things. And very blandly said, think better and think with sources. Think better is a huge kettle. Obviously, I'm not going to be pretentious enough to pretend I know what that means, but I think it's a direction to focus on. And it seems to me that there is something obvious about XR. We don't know what it is yet, but I think we're getting there. In the same way that you can, on a napkin, you can do certain kind of extended thought. On a A4 piece of paper, different. On a wall, like a TV murder wall, you can do a different kind of thinking. I'm not at all saying we will think better in XR for everything, not at all. But I do think that the only way we can really effectively address this over the coming year will be very rich, very shareable bits of knowledge, be they citations or other things, right? I keep hearing people saying people don't change their mind based on facts. Absolutely not. But they do change their mind based on how the facts are presented, right? It's about the relationships, about the context. Those things matter. And if we can help contextualize, if we can help people navigate, I think something can happen. So on the kind of plan for next year, there are some things that are banned, jokingly. For instance, discussions around HTML or PDF, that kind of stuff. I think we should think of a few more things over the next few weeks. Things that are kind of discussed, have it listed, and move on. Because there's a wide horizon out there. So please feel free to send me your what should be banned and saying why. And also, Dini has the final version of the book, so I'm talking to the new ones here, Evo, Astral, and Safari. Today, if you can send us a sentence to be in the book, one thing that we have on a mixed page of thoughts is when I put on a headset, I want to be able to see ... and I want to be able to do ... That could be a nice contribution if you would like to be in there, if you manage to get it to us at the end of the day. Any world-changing last thoughts before we...
I would love to see any of the worlds you've created. I'm about to publish a list of top 50 immersive worlds to see in 2026. So if you have some very interesting spaces, I'd love to see them. Also, we'll be updating the library at XR Guild, so feel free to keep sending your publications and posts, especially if they help the scholarship of the whole community. We'd love to see that.
That's very interesting. Brandel has some work like that, and Ken. For the project we've been working on here, it's been mostly not worlds, but environments. And if, let me just give you the link. And if you go to the page, the futuretextlab.info, there's a lot of little experiences. That's been our thing of experimenting to experience. So we're very careful not to build out big things. We're more kind of a research lab for that. So you can go in and you can play with a hand menu or play with this, but we don't do anything large and coherent.
Excellent. Thank you.
And also that is where the records for these meetings go. It is, hang on, I'm just trying to load it myself. It's also where the topics for the future will be listed. And for those of you who want to, you can subscribe to the calendar. I try to update it with what's on there. Brandel, would you like to talk to that?
Oh, just my Wikipedia timeline page. I'm looking for the YouTube video about it as well. This guy. It's a system that takes Wikipedia articles and turns them into timelines and then puts them into WebXR spaces as parallel streams of information. I haven't dug it up and sort of looked at it in a while, but it seems to still work. It was an effort to look at what information in space is, because a lot of the WebXR that I've seen out there has been things like data visualization or entertainment, video games or video players. And for the purposes of actually arranging information that sort of wants to be intrinsically related to and on the web, there are a number of interesting hurdles and challenges that sort of gave rise to my current kind of priorities.
It's so great to have you newbies here, along with the veteran Brandel, who started this whole thing. We had the future of text, and he said, maybe you should look at XR. I was like, maybe. Now, when I see, Brandel, what you've shown, and when I've looked at the library shape in space, I think it's easier to verbalize the goal for the work we're doing. I would absolutely, above anything in the world, love to be able to take a piece of knowledge from one of those environments onto another.
Yeah, and the interposability of those things is also something that's at odds with the WebXR model. So you can't run two WebXR experiences simultaneously that are completely distinct. You could try to pull those things in dynamically, and the web is a really great foundation for being able to kind of layer those things on top of each other. But fundamentally, WebXR being so for example, two 3JS experiences, you may be able to kind of pull things apart. But if one's in Babylon and one's in 3 or one's in Play Canvas, it's all over. That they're sort of foundationally irreconcilable in terms of what they're there to do, and that's a really critical problem for this notion of information being sort of possible to springboard off of and build different sort of composites of. So yeah, I feel very strongly that it would be in our interests to kind of come up with a model that that allows those things to live next to each other in the same way that an actual Safari window that has a teacup and a different Safari window that has a DSLR camera can literally live next to each other as those things exist spatially. And one of those can have a Severance environment in back so that you live in that. Hopefully we will get a WebKit post out about that stuff sooner rather than later.
So Brandl, obviously you're talking about the model element, which is brilliant.
Mhm.
Now, if I can pull you out of the screen in the minimalist form, do you think for that there could be a absolute minimal rendering of that? The reason I'm asking is because of what I just wrote in the chat. How cool would it be to have XR Markdown?
I think XR Markdown is Markdown. So the goal is for model element to be composable. And one of the things that we proposed to the W3C earlier this year was to use CSS anchoring and relating entities within the subtree of graphs so that you can attach DOM content to those pieces. So that means that you just use CSS. We introduce the idea of a front and a back as well as a left and a right and a top and a bottom. And then you make use of 3D CSS transforms to provide sort of non-lexical sort of presentational variations to that. So the idea there being that we do need to have a significant step change between sort of nominally 2D and nominally 3D kind of spaces. But the way that we resolve that is by the inclusion of something called a spatial figure tag that allows you to say this thing inside here is 3D now, and we understand the sort of pseudo 3D aspects of that to become truly 3D and live with the consequences. But that's one of the main things I kind of intend to hide. I think I maybe said this before. The W3C TPAC is going to be in Dublin next year, and I believe that there will need to be a significant sort of presentation of all of this spatial consequences for the web pages and the DOM, and I intend to try to put that together for that time.
So you'll be here. What time is it? What month is it?
October 26 to 30.
Fantastic. You jokingly said that XR Markdown is Markdown. Of course, you're right. But if we, just for the sake of argument, and we're a little over time, what do you all feel about the notion of being able to have in a plain text document inside curly brackets, sharp angle brackets, whatever it might be, some stuff that you can expect when it goes into one of our environments to be understood, not as a 3D model of a teacup, but as a knowledge object, which can then be interacted with based on different aspects. See you later, Ken. Thank you, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year.
Same to you. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, I didn't catch Rob when he was leaving. Does that appeal to you guys?
Yeah, it's a
It
primary
makes
goal.
sense for metadata for sure.
Yep.
Okay. So you'll be. Oh, are you having a birthday coming up, Tom, or are you talking about years and days? I expect we will all be older. New Year's, indeed. Okay, well, let's maybe.
My birthday is on New Year's, so
Oh, really?
I will actually be another year older the next time you see me.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to, whether or not you can make it is up to your individual schedules, of course, but to discuss such a thing of a copy-paste knowledge object between 3D environments, what do we call that? Because I'm going to put that in our calendar. Do you guys have a name for it?
Could you repeat that?
I didn't hear that, please. Oh, can I repeat? Sorry. For our calendar for next Monday, I'm going to put down part of the topic for discussion is developing a means through which plain text you can copy and paste into an XR environment and expect that to be understood as a knowledge object. That is a very long knowledge nuggets. That's nice, Peter. Yeah, do we have different ideas for what it might be called?
I'm not sure if I like knowledge because that implies factuality, but otherwise, yeah.
Sorry, that's my mother calling. At least you got the timing right. That's a good point. I'll think of something, but that'll be the next topic anyway. We could spend until the end of the year to come up with the title, but fair enough, fair point. Thank you all for today, and I look forward to much more things happening. So have a great New Year's, everyone.
Happy New Year's.
Bye.
Thank you, Frodo.
Bye bye.
Happy New Year.